Chapter 1. The Wake-Up Call. April 1941. General Henry Hap Arnold stood on a British airfield watching something that shouldn't exist. The small experimental aircraft taxiing in front of him had no propeller, no spinning blades, no roaring piston engine, just a high-pitched whine that sounded like a scream from the future. The Gloucester E-28-39 rolled down the runway and lifted into the air. Arnold watched it climb away, powered by something called a turbojet engine. The British engineer standing beside him, Frank Whittle, explained how it worked, how compressed air mixed with fuel created thrust without any rotating machinery visible from the outside. It was elegant, revolutionary. And according to Whittle, the Germans were already working on the same thing. Arnold was the chief of the United States Army Air Corps, and he understood immediately what he was seeing. Whoever mastered this technology first would own the skies. And if the British, bombed nightly by the Luftwaffe, were willing to share their most advanced secrets with America, then the situation in Germany must be even worse than anyone imagined. Arnold flew back to America carrying blueprints for Whittle's engine. He had no way of knowing it yet, but he'd just fired the starting gun on a race that would reshape the future of aviation. The finish line wasn't who could build the first jet. Germany would win that. The finish line was who could build them by the thousands. Chapter 2. America enters the jet age. On October 1st, 1942, in the middle of the Mojave Desert, at a place called Muroc Dry Lake, test pilot Robert Stanley was conducting high-speed taxi tests in a strange-looking aircraft. It was painted spinach green, short and stubby, with air intakes in the wing roots and absolutely no propeller. To disguise its true nature, ground crews had fitted a fake propeller to the nose whenever curious eyes were around. Stanley pushed the throttles forward. The twin jet engines, copies of Whittle's British design built by General Electric, wound up to full power. The aircraft accelerated down the lake bed faster than Stanley expected. Suddenly, it wasn't taxiing anymore. It was flying. This was the Bell XP-59 Airacomet, America's first jet aircraft, and its first flight happened completely by accident during what was supposed to be a ground test. The official first flight came the next day, October 2nd, when Colonel Lawrence Craigie took the controls and climbed to 10,000 feet. But from those first moments, engineers knew something was wrong. The Airacomet could reach 413 miles per hour, respectable for 1942, but it wasn't enough. Test flights revealed sluggish throttle response, poor stability above 290 miles per hour, and a tendency to snake through the air that made it useless as a gun platform. When the Army Air Force conducted trials against piston engine fighters like the P-38 Lightning and P-47 Thunderbolt, the results were devastating. The older propeller-driven fighters outperformed the jet. The Airacomet would never see combat. Only 66 were built before the program was canceled, but it served a crucial purpose. It taught American pilots and engineers everything about operating jet aircraft. Every mistake, every limitation, every lesson learned would feed into what came next. Chapter 3. 143 days. While Bell struggled with the Airacomet, another team was working in secret just up the California coast. In the summer of 1943, Lockheed's chief engineer, Kelly Johnson, gathered a small group of engineers and mechanics in a rented circus tent pitched next to the company's Burbank facility. The tent was positioned downwind from a plastics factory that smelled terrible. Johnson figured the stench would keep curious onlookers away. Johnson told his team they would be working 10 hours a day, 6 days a week for the foreseeable future. Their mission: design and build a jet fighter from scratch that could match anything the Germans had. Oh, and they had 150 days to do it. The deadline wasn't arbitrary. Allied intelligence had confirmed the existence of the Messerschmitt Me 262, and everyone from the president down understood what it meant. Germany was fielding an operational jet fighter. America needed one too, and they needed it yesterday. What happened next became legend. Working in conditions that were barely one step above a garage operation, the circus tent leaked when it rained, and summer heat turned it into an oven. Johnson's team delivered the XP-80 prototype in 143 days, 7 days ahead of schedule. On January 8, 1944, test pilot Milo Burcham took the XP-80 into the air for the first time. Nicknamed Lulu Bell, the aircraft was sleek and aggressive-looking with a single engine buried in the fuselage and air intakes in the wing roots. Unlike the disappointing Airacomet, the P-80 was fast. It exceeded 500 miles per hour on early test flights and handled beautifully. This was it, America's first real combat jet. The aircraft that would evolve into the F-80 Shooting Star see action in Korea and spawn the T-33 trainer that would teach a generation of pilots to fly jets. But building a prototype was one thing. Building thousands of them was something else entirely. And that's where the story gets interesting. Chapter 4. Germany's magnificent failure. While American engineers worked on the P-80, Germany was putting the Me 262 into production. On paper, it should have ended the war. The Me 262 was faster than any Allied fighter, 540 miles per hour in level flight, more than 100 miles per hour, faster than a P-51 Mustang. Armed with 4 30mm cannons, it could tear apart a bomber formation in seconds. German test pilot Heini Dittmar had pushed an Me-262 to 623 miles per hour in testing, and Luftwaffe pilots claimed the jet shot down over 500 Allied aircraft during its operational life. When Me-262s attacked American bomber formations, the experience was terrifying. Allied pilots described them as blurs moving so fast that gunners couldn't track them with their turrets. But here's what the Allied bomber crews didn't see. The Germans were barely keeping the Me-262s in the air. Production began in April 1944, but only 107 aircraft were delivered by August. The Junkers Jumo 004 engines that powered them were engineering marvels, but they were also fragile nightmares. Germany lacked access to heat-resistant alloys like nickel and cobalt, so they substituted inferior materials. The average operational life of a Jumo 004 engine was 25 hours. 25 hours before it needed a complete overhaul or replacement. By November 1944, Germany managed to produce just 101 Me-262s. In December, 124. In January 1945, 160. It wasn't until February 1945, 3 months before Germany's surrender, that monthly production finally reached 280 aircraft. In total, Germany built approximately 400 Me-262s between 1944 and 1945, but only around 300 ever became operational. The rest sat in factories unfueled and unflyable, waiting for engines that never arrived, or pilots that didn't exist, or fuel that had been bombed into non-existence by Allied air raids. Chapter 5. The Arsenal of Democracy. Now let's talk about what was happening in America at the same time. By 1945, the United States had already produced nearly 300,000 military aircraft. Not jets, conventional fighters, and bombers. 300,000 aircraft in 5 years. To put that in perspective, Germany and Japan combined produced fewer planes than America did alone. American factories weren't just building planes, they were perfecting the art of mass production on a scale the world had never seen. Ford's Willow Run facility built B-24 bombers on an assembly line that stretched for over a mile. At peak production, a complete B-24, weighing 36,000 pounds and containing over 165,000 parts, rolled off that line every 63 minutes. This wasn't luck. It was the result of a massive government investment in manufacturing capacity. Between 1940 and 1945, the United States government provided $3.4 billion to expand aircraft production facilities, 89% of the total $3.8 billion invested in aircraft plants during that period. In July 1944, General Electric received $25 million just to convert a turbine plant in Syracuse, New York, to build jet engines. Factories ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. By 1943, the aircraft industry employed 2.1 million workers, including tens of thousands of women. The industry that had ranked 41st in American manufacturing before the war had become number 1. And here's the crucial part. When the P-80 Shooting Star entered production in February 1945, all of that infrastructure was already in place. The assembly lines, the trained workers, the supply chains, the quality control systems, everything needed to build jets at scale already existed. By the end of July 1945, America had delivered 83 P-80s. 45 were assigned to operational squadrons. The Army Air Force had placed orders for thousands more. Production ramped up quickly because American factories already knew how to build complex aircraft quickly. The transition from piston engines to jets was just another engineering problem to solve, and American industry had become very, very good at solving engineering problems at scale. Chapter 6. The Race. Germany never knew it lost. In January 1945, 4 YP-80A Shooting Stars were secretly shipped to Europe as part of something called Project Extraversion. 2 went to England, 2 to Italy. The plan was to familiarize Allied pilots with jet operations and potentially send them into combat against the Me-262. One of the jets crashed during a demonstration flight in England, killing the pilot, when an engine failure caused the tail section to disintegrate, but the others flew successfully, and word quickly spread through Allied command. America had working jets. They weren't quite ready for combat yet, but they would be soon. German intelligence never caught wind of this. As far as Hitler and his generals knew, America was still flying propeller planes. The Me-262 was the future, and Germany owned it exclusively. But at the same time, those 4 P-80s were flying in Europe. American factories were preparing for something unprecedented. The war in Europe ended in May 1945. Japan surrendered in August. But if the war had continued, American production plans called for building 5,000 P-80 Shooting Stars. 5,000 jets using assembly line methods perfected on hundreds of thousands of conventional aircraft. Germany's total jet production over 2 years won 400 aircraft with only 300 operational. America's planned jet production for a single year, 5,000 aircraft. And unlike the temperamental Me-262, the P-80 was designed from the start for mass production. It used readily available materials. Its engines were reliable. Its maintenance requirements were reasonable. The difference wasn't in engineering. Genius German engineers were brilliant. The difference was in industrial capacity. Germany could build a wonder weapon. America could build 1,000 wonder weapons before lunch and still have time to eat. Chapter 7. The Legacy. The P-80 never fought the Me-262. By the time American jets were ready for combat, Germany had surrendered, and the Me-262s had been abandoned or destroyed. But 5 years later, when North Korea invaded South Korea in 1950, F-80 Shooting Stars were among the first aircraft to respond. On November 8, 1950, Lieutenant Russell Brown, flying an F-80, shot down a North Korean MiG-15 in the world's first jet-versus-jet air combat. The MiG-15 was a Soviet design heavily influenced by captured German technology and Me-262 research. In a strange twist of fate, American jets built using lessons from the P-59 and refined in the P-80 were fighting Soviet jets built using German technology. And America was still outproducing everyone. Between 1944 and the end of production, Lockheed built 714 P-80 Shooting Stars. But that was just the beginning. The trainer version, the T-33, saw over 6,500 built. The design influenced the F-94 Interceptor and countless other jets that followed. By the 1950s, every major air force in the world flew jets, but America dominated the market because American factories could produce them faster and cheaper than anyone else. The same industrial capacity that had built 300,000 aircraft during World War II now churned out jets by the hundreds, then thousands. Hitler had bet on superior technology winning the war. He believed the Me-262 would turn the tide, that German engineering excellence would overcome Allied numerical superiority. He was half right. The Me-262 was the most advanced fighter of World War II. But wars aren't won by individual weapons. They're won by the ability to produce those weapons in numbers that matter. In December 1940, President Franklin Roosevelt gave a fireside chat where he declared that America must become the great arsenal of democracy. Most people remember that phrase. What they forget is what Roosevelt said next. I should like to see this nation geared up to the ability to turn out at least 50,000 planes a year. At the time, critics called it impossible propaganda. Adolf Hitler himself was told by his advisors that American production claims were lies. But by 1944, America was producing 96,000 aircraft annually. Roosevelt hadn't been exaggerating. If anything, he'd been conservative. When German generals finally understood the scale of American production, when they saw the numbers verified, them confirmed them. It must have been stunning. Germany had pioneered jet technology. They'd fielded the first operational jet fighter. They'd created a weapon so advanced it seemed like science fiction. And America had matched it, improved it, and prepared to mass-produce it before Germany could even keep their jets fueled. That's the untold story of the jet race. Not that America built better jets, though eventually they did. The story is that America built the factories that could turn any new technology into a weapon of war faster than anyone else on Earth.